I can take any scenario, any situation, even if it's initially classified as negative, and find the beauty in it, find the benefit in it. I'm always asking, like, what is the lesson? What am I supposed to get out of this? What am I supposed to recycle from this? And I will say absolutely all things positive. Even if in the moment while I'm experiencing it and going through it, it might feel like, oh, this is crap. Oh, this sucks. Oh, this is the worst. This is awful. It always ends up turning out to be something just what I needed.
Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll leave a link on the show notes. And in today's podcast, I have Timia Porter, also known as TheeCarbonQueen. She's a wellness entrepreneur, a criterium racer, who rides not just for fitness or medals, but for every black girl who feels invisible. In this conversation, we talked about healing through motion, building what you've never seen, and reclaiming your power. So why should you keep listening? For 3 key reasons. First, because Timia transformed her pain, her trauma, her neurodiversity into radical healing. Second, because you will learn what really takes to lead with integrity in a world that often overlooks you. And last but not least, how the bike, a simple and beautiful machine, became the bridge back to herself. So stick with us until the end of the conversation, because you'll get to hear our blueprint for courage, a lesson in leadership, and a deep dive into what it means to be the whole in motion. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to follow Ride to Success wherever you listen to the podcast. Leave a rating, leave a review, because that's the best way to get these podcasts to reach more people like you. Now, let's get into this conversation. Welcome, Timia, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. Today, there is so many topics to cover, and especially because you have a journey that spans many chapters. And I'm really interested in trying to understand if there is a threading line between all of them, because your journey spans the military, culinary arts, entrepreneurship, now the cycling. You worked as well in the cycling industry. And can you give us a little glimpse into the traits, the values that thread all of these chapters together?
Moon phases. I think that's just the best analogy or metaphor that I could connect to it all. There are many parts to me. I like to consider myself a multi-hyphenated woman. And I'm a pursuer of passions. They say jack of all trades, but I don't really agree with that. I'm definitely a pursuer of passions, and since the beginning of my existence, just been on a path to discover my life and who I am, and wanting to do all the things that interests me. Not having to choose one thing or another, but being able to do all the things, maybe not all at one time, but giving each part of me its retrospective time to explore and be curious and develop and just see how far I can take it before moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that there is an element here of, we don't need to stick to one line or one avenue. We don't need to. And there is many, many successful people, journeys that where, you could define, their journey, and this is coming from me. I'm like, you can take it or leave it, but there's always a wiggly kind of journey that, is not this direct line from A to B. And then
Right.
you get to there and they're like, yeah, done it, great, the journey was great. But there is the beauty in sometimes going through kind of the path less traveled, and just drawing your own curvatures and your own trajectories as you find your passions, as you kind of
Exactly.
pivot, if you
Exactly.
will.
Exactly. I don't
Uh,
wanna choose. I wanna I don't why choose, you know, why leave it to another lifetime when we
mhm.
have so many opportunities and so much time in this lifetime? And, you know, they say life is short, and I'm like, "Well, I wanna try to fit as many inches in as possible."
I mean, I think there is also, and yeah, when we talk about, and we're going to get to this into this topic that I'm going to approach right now into
Uh-huh.
more detail later on in the conversation. But when we, with neurodivergency, there is
Mhm.
an element of creativity, of wanting to explore multiple paths, and your attention being focused on several aspects at the same time.
Yes.
And I was wondering if there is a connection to that aspect of
Oh,
yourself
yeah.
being neurodivergent,
Uh-huh.
and kind of how you tailor your life, how you approach it.
Yeah, squirrel. Like, literally, like, that's just just definitely, beautiful, beautiful distractions, you know?
Yeah.
I crave things that are stimulating, and if I am focused on a thing and it's not stimulating me, enough,
Mhm.
it's easy to become distracted, and so
Yeah.
I will say that in regards to my career, however, um, as a culinary chef, a trained, classically trained chef, um, I did that for about 11 years,
Mhm.
and my beautiful distraction was the birth of my daughter.
Yeah.
And working 16 hours as an executive
Yeah.
sous chef is, as you know, with you having an 18-month-old, is not conducive. And so,
No.
wanting to find another way to explore my creativity, because I'm a Libra, and I don't know
Mhm.
if you know much about astrology and zodiacs, but
No.
we're creative beings and we're indecisive. Um, I wanted to figure out a way where I could, like, raise my child and also be creative, and be
Mhm.
passionate, and even at the time, I didn't even know that I had ADHD because 'cause I'm
Right.
late diagnosis, as of
Mhm.
last year, and so it was wonderful to get the diagnosis and then have hindsight into
Yeah.
all of my past ways and decisions and paths and journeys, and it was like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So
Yeah.
yes, there's definitely a connection in the way that I've chosen to pursue my passions, and
Mhm.
then connecting that to with this newfound beautiful, diagnosis of, like, ADHD. It's like, "Oh, that makes sense." It's not just the fact
Exactly.
that I'm a Libra, like, I have this mental thing going on here.
Yeah. I mean, it's you call it beautiful distractions. But you had to kind of devote that time with intention to
Yes,
to achieve your best results, whether it is
yes,
being a executive chef, whether it is being a cyclist. That all takes focus and attention and
yes,
requires effort and resilience. So
yes.
I would add on to that what I think what you just said. And is also interesting, and kind of um, kind of also important to stress that you you kind of you embraced that diagnosis, because for instance in UK, 20 there's a statistic that says that 20% of people have are neurodivergent,
Mhm,
yet a lot of those people will mask the condition because they want to fit in into society.
mhm,
And I think one of the important things here is also stressing that you are being true to yourself, you're being honest with what you believe and how you want to go about doing wherever interests you and following your passions.
Yes, I'm so glad that you brought up masking, because it is something that I still live with. You
Mm,
know, it there's two elements to the masking.
yeah.
As a Black woman, there's a masking called code switching,
Mm,
because I am a Black woman and the culture that I come from, we were raised a certain way. We have certain
yeah.
mannerisms, certain, slang and ways of speaking and ways of, just being, that doesn't necessarily fit in every environment. Most notably like a corporate world, like the way I would talk to my girlfriend or my friend or whatever is going to be completely different than
Mm,
how I speak to someone in a corporate world. And I'm not even just talking about professionalism, like I want to make sure that I don't look mean or I don't look irritated or I don't look, negative. I'm not coming
yeah.
off negative. So that's one form of masking. And then in regards to like general society, yeah, I'm very different. I'm weird and I can be very direct and all these other characteristics that necessarily don't rub people, the right way just because they don't know me and my intentions and my heart. And
Yeah.
so just initially, first impressions, they say are everything initially, it can be a little off putting. And so it becomes exhausting.
Mm,
Um, I don't know if you ever use the term like social battery. We all
yep.
have a social battery, and our social battery is kind of like tapped double time in the sense
Mm,
of not only are we just being social, but we're masking and sometimes being a chameleon.
yeah.
And I don't mean chameleon in a pejorative sense, but we want to resonate with whoever we're trying to connect with. And so, unintentionally and subconsciously, we will kind of like take on the mannerisms or even accent or just
Right.
little
Yeah.
things that we're not even realizing is happening just to connect with the other person. So all of this is going on in our head at the same time, and our battery is like draining and draining and draining and draining. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we can experience once we realize and become knowledgeable of what it
Mhm.
is and how it happens. We have more control over it. And I'll finish this thought off with setting boundaries. We have to set boundaries with ourselves and set boundaries with others.
Mhm.
And that keeps us from harming ourselves. And it makes us more self aware and mindful when engaging with others.
Yeah. I mean, well. First of all, thanks for sharing that because I think you have beautifully put and described like so much in it's. I'm going to try to kind of follow up on that.
That's my brain. See, that's my brain right there. Like, it's like, it's got all these
It's
different
brilliant. It's brilliant
circuits.
because it no in like in such a short period of time we already went so deep into the, into this topic, which is important to talk and address because I think that's what makes us special. That's definitely what makes you special, and that's what makes you unique. And I think being true to to that is the kind of the it's the kind of the spark that ignites then wherever path you choose to set yourself in. And you know, I, I recognize a lot of elements in that you just described. The kind of the social battery, the blending in. There
Mhm,
is an element I think that can be without generalizing too much that can
mhm,
be applied to kind of perhaps people that are introverts.
mhm,
And I often describe myself as introvert.
mhm.
My partner would disagree. She says that I'm an extrovert hiding in an introvert body. Um,
There's a
but
term for that. There's a term for that. It's an
so there is. Sorry.
omnivert. I think there's an actual term for that. Don't quote me, but there is a term for someone who kind of embodies both in a sense,
Mm,
depending on the setting that they find themselves in.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then just right there, what you just said, it like basically describes the fact that I think as a society, and obviously I'm not an expert on this, but what from my observation is that from society, there is a saying that goes like this roughly, you are the sum of your 5 closest friends, and
Yes.
that what that means is that your community, your inner circle, they help you grow, but they also help you define and contextualize your life. And that
Yes.
if the people are curious and athletic, you will be inclined to also have those traits, because it
Mm,
kind of everything just it kind of bleeds on to the edges. So you start to mirror somewhat other
mm-hmm.
people's actions, and that's, I think, that's perhaps one defense mechanism, like one from our prime, from from prehistoric days, or we try to fit in and just try to be part of the tribe.
Yes.
There's also an element, we are now comfortable, let's go and try to explore closer to the edges and try to be a bit more different and unique and
Yeah.
stand out.
Yes.
And so, I mean, what I also wanted to understand is, and we'll touch about more about neurodivergency, because I can't just close that topic right now. I
No.
think, but I wanted to now kind of create a segue into cycling. Cycling. That's how I first got to know you. Through your Instagram handle, the Carbon Queen,
Yes.
um, and you know you how did you discover cycling? And I wonder, my purpose with that question is not to like is to understand, was there around you a group of people that were cycling and you saw yourself as a possibility of wanting to cycle as well, or is it just like a different way? Okay, I want to get fit. Let me find cycling.
That's an interesting. I'm glad you asked that question. It My first introduction to cycling was actually when I was 13 or 14.
Mm,
My dad and I would ride. We have something called the Santa Monica Canals.
right.
We lived in Inglewood at the time, and so we would just, hop. There's this bike path that will take you from where we were to all the way to Santa Monica, and from there, I kind of went into doing other things like soccer, and soccer carried me through all
Mm,
the way to my adulthood years, all the way up to COVID is
right. Okay. Wow.
when that was my last time playing on a professional, not professional, but a adult league team
Hmm.
here, and I wanted a way to stay in shape because I said to myself, if I survive COVID, I want to be able to go back and play soccer and not,
Yeah.
be out of shape. So I picked up cycling, and I haven't been back. Honestly, I tried to go back to play once everything opened back up, and my body just didn't have the same tolerance for the
Mm,
wear and tear that soccer puts on your body. So although I had the fitness, my bones and my joints just couldn't take
yeah.
all of that rigid stop and go. And from there, it was just the dual purpose for cycling also was to kind of stay out of the home. That It was pretty
Yeah.
tumultuous with my partner, and it was a way
Okay.
for me to get out and escape in a sense, and yeah, so that was a beautiful thing. And from there, you know, you're on the road, you're riding, and you see other cyclists. You see people posting on Instagram because there was nothing else to do but be at home
Hmm.
on social media, and you see other people posting that they're out riding their bike, and it's like, I have never seen you ride a bike. Where'd you get that bike from? I didn't even know you knew how to ride a bike. And at that point, Facebook Marketplace was like the black market because they were
Yeah.
selling just these bikes that you would normally see for $150 were selling as much as $500, $600, $700 because
Wow.
it was a commodity at the time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Everyone had
the
to be
the
cycling.
demand
Yeah.
outweighed the supply. And so
Mm.
I got my first bike as an adult. It was a Bianchi, and it was just an old school,
Yeah.
nothing fancy, but beautiful. You know, they're always beautiful. And from there, you know how it goes. You're out riding your bike, you meet someone, you see their bike, you're like, "Ooh, what's that? Oh, I need to go and get one of those." So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had some disposable income, and so I went from one bike to my third or fourth bike all within 2 months just because I kept trading. So
Brilliant. So there is kind of a certain darkness to the story, because you mentioned that you know, cycling. You rode with your dad when you were in your teens,
mhm,
and then you found it again
mhm,
because of COVID. But seems to be also an element of kind of pain that is associated
mhm.
to
Oh
discovering
yeah.
cycling into you mentioned about finding solace in cycling to run
Mhm,
away from kind of ex-partner, I believe.
mhm, mhm.
And oh, and I wanted to I don't want to like to come across as it kind of I want to come tread this carefully. That's what
Okay,
I'm trying to get at.
I
But
understand.
as
See?
this, you know, as cycling became kind of transformative and healing in both the physical side and also the psychological side.
Yes, yes. I think, and I'm making a huge assumption and generalization, but I think there are a lot of athletes that can
Hmm.
relate to trauma
Yeah.
and using that trauma to kind of fuel them in a way as a resource place that we can tap into, you
Hmm.
know? We don't want to. I also do martial arts as well, and so they
Right.
teach you like you don't want to fight angry, like you don't want to fight mad, you know. But when it comes to cycling directly, I have learned, and I am still learning, to tap into that space of hurt and pain
Hmm.
and trauma, and instead of like just using it for what it is, but essentially tapping into it and kind of like refining it and recycling it and turning that energy into something positive, kind of like how we turn petroleum into gasoline, you know, just using that to fuel us and motivate us. And as we're doing that, in sync, we're healing, right?
Hmm.
We're we're doing digging to access that resource of pain. But as we're pulling it out and using it as fuel, we're also having to address it, right? We're having
Yeah.
to face it. We're having to dig a little deeper and try to understand ourselves. And then also, we're seeing not only are we able to use it as fuel, but we're also becoming more self aware and seeing
Hmm.
how our trauma shows up not just as we're competing or doing something athletic, but how our trauma shows up when we're engaging in community and engaging in society. You know, it never leaves you. You know, it
Hmm.
changes, it morphs, but it never leaves you entirely.
Yeah. So, kind of, and again, I'm trying to try to obviously to tread carefully because it's
Oh,
kind
you're
of
fine.
obviously
You're
it's
fine.
a it's a very sensitive topic,
Go
and
ahead. Go ahead. I'm probably the easiest person to talk about these things with simply because I have done some work. And
yeah,
so if we would have been having this conversation maybe 5 years ago, it would probably be a little touchy, but
yeah,
I've grown and I've healed in vast ways. So I just want to give you the comfort and the
okay,
ease to just go ahead and ask whatever you want to know.
thanks,
Yes.
thanks,
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that kind of that you touch is kind of that you the trauma stays with you, but you learn how to use it, how to live with it
Hmm.
without having to consume your life,
Yes.
without having to limit your choices.
Hmm.
And there is an element with when cycling that you are with the pedaling motion, you are pushing the pedals right, left, right, left, right, left. There's a kind of this a stimulus that
Yes.
happens in the brain, whether you like the left and the right brain are being stimulated at the same time. And I wanted to understand that one thing that you mentioned a while ago, that in this personal growth, in this personal journey that came from, had this chapter where there was a trauma involved, you know, cycling became therapy for you.
Yes.
And I wanted to understand, a bit more about that. What kind of exactly does that mean to you? Because it can mean a lot of different things to many people, and I wanted to understand what is for you.
Serotonin and dopamine. I mean, just in the most simplest sense. It's Do you recall the last time you cried, and even if it was over something positive or negative, you kind of afterwards you had like this kind of like light feeling, that comes from serotonin.
Hmm.
Sometimes when I'm working out on my bike and I'm doing something really hard, I I like when I start to cry. It's not always something emotional or psychological, but because I know chemically it's gonna
Hmm.
make everything that hurts it feel better, And then let's not forget my friend adrenaline, right? These are chemical reactions that are taking place within my body, and
Yeah.
I know the activities, the physical activities, increase the output of
Hmm.
those things. And ultimately, we're human. Naturally, we want to feel good. Even if we're doing something, even if we're choosing to do something that brings us pain, or is
Yeah.
a struggle or is tough, we still want to find joy in it and relief from it. And that's what physical activity does for me.
Hmm.
When I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling sad, I know that if I could just will myself, find a little bit of strength to get myself on the bicycle, um, that all the chemical reactions are going to happen and naturally make me feel better. And then also anything that I'm thinking, I can, transfer that energy to the activity that I'm doing because
Hmm.
energy is never destroyed, it's only transferred. And so it takes energy to think. People think because it's not like a physical thing that you're doing, it's not energy. But yes, it takes
Yeah.
energy to commit your thoughts to particular thoughts. And so instead of continuing on the train of just thinking, I'm now diverting that energy into doing.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is. I mean, you answered. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. Obviously, uh, it's your personal experience that you're sharing, and I think that's. I hope that is valuable to people listening. And certainly, inspirational to me to understand that point of view, to understand your experience, because not it's not often that people are open about one, about trauma and how trauma then it kind of helps them to shape their life, or
Mhm.
helps them to understand differently how to harness that pain into make
Mhm.
it into a different type of energy, rather than being a negative one, being a positive one, without obviously you know um, there's an element of trauma that can never be taken lightly. But
Mhm.
once you mentioned you did work on it, that can be then reframed. Obviously, with work, that transformation happens. And obviously, with cycling, it's a lot of people will describe cycling as a form of meditation, a form of therapy, an escape.
Mhm.
You know,
All of those things.
yeah, because it gives them the freedom, gives them the space to be in the present, gives them the focus. And then you mentioned as well the serotonin and the
Mhm.
adrenaline, all that comes together, and it kind of gives you a boost of energy, a boost of positivity.
Yes.
I think while in the theme of cycling, you're now racing,
Mhm.
and I wanted to ask you is that there are we sometimes you talk to professional athletes, and they talk about how they use negative emotions to
Mhm.
harness more like more motivation, more energy. Just if they want to prove someone wrong, or uh, and wanted to understand if there's an element to that, or if you are just craving that the adrenaline of racing that involves just managing chaos.
I pray for my competitors the day I learn how to harness negative energy or trauma to increase my abilities as an athlete. I have not been able to tap into that yet. And I have a lot of ammo or fuel. And I just, I I have not been able to like take something presently happening or like a vendetta in a sense.
Yeah,
It's hard for me to, yeah, I can use negative things to, I can use cycling to in competition to escape from something that's happened in the past, from someone that I'm no longer connected to, or things that I had no control over as a child or whatever. But as of today, like when I look at the women that I race against, like all the stuff that's within the race community, it's hard to like tap into, for me at this time, to tap into any type of like, oh, I'll show you, like but the day I learn how to do that,
right.
I pray for my competitors, because yeah, I've always seen competition in a friendly,
Right.
sisterhood bonding type of thing. I grew up with three brothers. I didn't grow up with sisters. So even even as a competitor competing against other women, it's hard for me to see like rivalry,
Okay.
even in a light sense, and so, but there's definitely cause and reasons to have that disposition.
Hmm.
I haven't tapped into it yet, so we're gonna have to have a follow-up podcast. Once I'm gonna email you once I discover the
Right. Okay.
magic code. on how to tap into that. I feel like it's like a special code from like Mortal Kombat, you know. Yeah, once I tap into it, I will have a better answer for you in that
All right,
question.
brilliant. I mean, what? Yeah, well, that's brilliant. I mean, it's an aspect that I think without trivializing, um, the kind of what we've just been discussing is that sometimes psychologists will say try to focus on how the healing process is going to get you in a better place, rather
Yeah.
than focus on harnessing that negative energy, because that will just eventually come back to bite you. But I wanted to kind of build a bridge here, because there is also a very important aspect of the work you do. I mean, there's many, but I'm going to focus on one right now, which is the work that you have done with the community, within leadership, to kind of improve the grassroots racing movements, especially women of color, and to kind of and I wanted to focus on that aspect, and wanted to draw listeners to the attention to that work that you've been doing, because it's critical to bring more young kids of color to the sport, which is predominantly white male dominated. So can you share the work and the experience that you have created, an opportunity that you created within kind of the grassroots movement?
Yes. Thank you for asking. Whew, where have I been? I've been all around this world. It initially just starts off with seeing someone, whether they're on the bike or off the bike, and just peeking, asking the question like, "Hey, what are you
Mm,
doing to work out, or what are you doing for fitness these days?" And if they happen to be on the bike, like, hey, like, what are your what are your interests in cycling? Like, are you just doing
yeah.
this in your free time? And like, it's just like, it's a courting, and you're
Hmm.
just trying to see where someone is and where their desire to be. I see women, especially women of color. It's like seeing a unicorn these days. When it comes to cycling, it's
Mm,
out here. You We pretty much all know who's who when it comes to being a Black woman riding a
right.
bike. And so whenever I see someone that I've never seen before, it's like, come back, come here. Can I talk to you for a second? Like, I just want to know who you are. I've never seen you.
Hmm.
Like, can we like connect? Can we go on
Yeah.
rides? And I'm someone who's open to riding all kinds of rides. It can be a coffee ride. It can be all gears, no brakes. It could be climbing, it could be a
Hmm.
century. I'm down. I'm just here for the connection in the community. And I only recently started racing last year. Was
Hmm.
my first, I guess, rookie year in the sense of just really taking it seriously and racing competitively,
Right.
consistently, with like strict, structured goals. And I actually got a coach last year, David Liscombe of CIS Cycling, and that totally changed the game,
Hmm.
in regards to that. And so, going back to your question, I started working for all women's cycling apparel line named
Yeah.
Gelanu.
Right.
And with them, I led brand activations, where I hosted group rides, and I wanted
Mm,
to find women who were interested in doing their first century ride. And it was a series of group rides where we started off at 10 miles. And then every time we got together, we added on another 10 miles and worked our
wow.
way
Nice.
up to 100 miles. And over the course of, women coming and going, showing up, not showing up, I'm just noticing like, some women they've got the look in regards to not aesthetically, but just the work that they're putting in to gain their fitness. Um, and I'm just like, hey, are you interested in racing? So that's one element of, I guess,
Mhm.
recruiting, I guess you could say. It's like, even if you're not interested in racing, I still want to ride with you. I still want to help you along with whatever your journey is. And then the other element is, well, if you are interested in racing, let's talk about that. And then another thing, I love the littles. And when I say the littles, I mean kids. I
Yeah.
love getting kids on bikes. And I've had the pleasure of working with the Bahati Foundation,
Mm.
who is just iconic in
Yeah.
working with kids and getting them on bikes. We led a activation at my elementary school in Inglewood, Baldwin Hills Elementary School, and I was honored to be invited to take part in the success of that. I've traveled to different states, and I've been asked to, speak at different engagements and also lead some kid
Yeah.
activations, with getting them through obstacle courses and pedaling. Like they come and they've never ridden a bike, and before they leave, they know how to ride a bike, or they come and they have training
Yeah.
wheels on, and before they leave, we're taking those training wheels off. So,
Brilliant.
and more personally, close to home, my daughter cycles as well, and it's
Brilliant.
amazing to see her compete whenever we're able to find a race that offers kids her age the opportunity to race. I love seeing her compete. She loves seeing me compete. We love riding around the neighborhood together, just mommy and me rides. So it's very fulfilling.
Hmm. One of the questions that I wanted to follow up, kind of from the work that you've been doing at grassroots level, is one aspect that is important, I think, and from your experience, how do you define a true inclusive cycling space?
Um, I think something that is truly inclusive um, needs to go a step and a level beyond being inclusive, and that is belonging.
Hmm.
I think it's one thing to be like, yes, come here, come in, be here. But when the person is there, do they feel like they belong? It's not just about the invite, but it's about the welcome, you
Hmm.
know? And so wanting to grow that feeling, there's some foundational things, are you are you what you preach, in a sense? Like, are you the individual, the one who is fostering this environment, fostering this sense of belonging? Are you carrying on in that way as a person?
Hmm.
Um, and how does who you are and what you embody translate to the community and the circle that you're trying to promote? They're like communication, conflict resolution,
Yeah.
accountability. It's not just about optics, right? It's not just about something that looks good, something that's shiny, something that, you've got all the bells and whistles, but behind closed doors, how are you really operating? And
Hmm.
I think if we start there at the foundational level, it will naturally show for itself on the outside. And that will naturally govern how people feel when they're entering into the space that you've prepared.
Hmm. And that, I mean, that's yeah, that's such a topic that is, I think, is now taking a much center and forward position. With I think from what I see, obviously there's work to do. Not to say there isn't. And have you been involved? Because kind of your work at grassroots level, your experience. Have you been involved with brands to kind of at the more of kind of a business level to advise or consult into implement these changes into how do we make our cycling space, our communities more inclusive, rather than, as you mentioned, rather than just being about optics, more about kind of the structural change.
It's challenging, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It is challenging to approach brands because I'm just a single bodied entity. And yes, I can do great things and mighty things. But it's almost like if you're not a professional, if you don't
Yeah.
have all the followers and all the things, it's kind of challenging. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm always reaching out to brands, and I'm always, saying, hey, what about this? And what about that? And look at this and look at that. Um, but as of right now, I'm just kind of a soloist and just preaching on my platforms. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that, from what you see, you're able to get some ideas and want to include me in the developmental process. Um, I love all things bikes,
Mm-hmm.
and I personally made it a mission to show up and represent women of color in all these different events where I don't see people like us.
Mm-hmm.
Most recently, I got brought on as a brand ambassador for Sea Otter.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. And that was the fruition of a mission that I had last year, which was to go to this predominantly um, white event and um, show up and race and do a race on a course that I had physically no business doing. That corkscrew circuit race is not for the faint of heart. And I showed up and I wore all highlighter pink and I have a pink bike and I raced and I walked around in that kit and walked around with my bike and I want it I want it to be seen, and
Mm-hmm.
in society it's frowned upon to want to be seen. It's seen as like arrogant or vain, you know,
Yeah.
and it wasn't about arrogance. It wasn't about vanity. It was definitely about representation. It was, I wanted you to see me as an ambassador, as a representative, and it worked.
Yeah.
I later this earlier this year I got asked to come, like, hey, we saw you last year and we loved everything that we saw, and we want you to come and officially represent being an athlete, being a competitor
Yeah.
here at Sea Otter. So that was exciting. That was fun and validating to have a mission and cross your fingers and hope that it turns out this way and for it to actually turn out that way. It was very fun. So, but to go back to your question, I love the idea of connecting with brands, communities, small businesses, nonprofits, individual missions that desire to make their space more inclusive and belonging because they are two
Mm-hmm.
separate ideas, right? And yeah, I'm always open. I have my contact information on my Instagram.
Of course is important to mention that, because it, it highlights what is missing. And I think case in point, you showing up at Sea Otter, uh, the race, and that's your conscious decision to make that move, right? Despite what you see in the media, and
Yes.
highlighting, look, this is here I am. This this is what is missing right now, and
Mhm.
and I got good for Sea Otter for understanding that, and
Mhm.
reaching out to you and kind of saying, like, come over, let's work together. Hopefully, that is in a more, in a with the ambition to bring more athletes of color to the event and to open doors to kind of bring inclusion to a more meaningful way rather than just being about, as you mentioned, optics.
Yes.
I wanted to one of the aspects that I wanted to talk about, and we will get about. We'll carry on talking about the topic that we started at the beginning, talking about uh, neurodiversity. But I
Mhm.
wanted to create a little chapter here about um, your entrepreneurial side.
Mhm.
You kind of you founded, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you founded Turquoise plus Salt,
Mhm.
a wellness-orientated business born of your personal journey of self-love.
Mhm.
And Turquoise and Salt started as a handcrafted waste
Mhm.
bead shop, and now
Mhm.
has grown into a brick and mortar wellness space focusing on
Mhm.
mindfulness, community, and healing. And you said that in the past that the waste beads and this connection allowed you to fall back in love with your body. So, to build more of a kind of 360 picture of you as a person, you know, how has reclaiming your identity as a Black woman influences your presence in cycling
Mhm.
and business? And I ask this from a place of curiosity. I'm not. I'm just trying to be curious.
No, I love it. That's where it starts. Curiosity is a great thing, and I am very grateful and appreciative of that question. I've done quite a few podcasts, and this is probably the first one that is bringing turquoise and salt into frame, and I
Hmm.
appreciate that. Um, the two intersect in a sense of as an athlete, um, specifically cycling. There is um, a big focus on weight and
Yeah.
aesthetics. I have myself have been guilty at a little bit of like physical imposter
Mm.
syndrome in the sense of, oh, I'm not going to look good in that, or, I'm not light enough to be as fast as I want to be, or I'm not light enough to climb at the rate that I want to climb. And I, although those thoughts are fractions of a second, they happen,
Yeah.
occasionally. And with my waist beads, traditionally, they are worn, culturally, they are worn to shape the waist.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons. They're also worn for young girls to have like a coming of age um,
Okay.
uh, adornment, and then with learning more about waist beads, I wanted to use it to set intentions.
Hmm.
When I tie one on, I'm setting it on. I'm tying it as a part of a ceremony to set a specific intention. Now, where the weight element comes in is in the material that is used. It does not stretch.
Hmm.
It doesn't stretch. So this jewelry article is going around my waist at my current measurements. And if I start gaining weight, they get tight. And when I
Hmm.
start losing weight, they get loose. And as someone who is a hybrid of when it comes to priorities, I do have goals, weight loss goals, but they're not based on some kind of standard that has to be met in order for me to accomplish my goals as an athlete. These are my
Right.
own personal desires, weight loss goals and desires. And the beautiful thing about wearing a waist bead is that I don't have to step on a scale, because stepping on a scale can be obsessive. You can
Yeah.
do it every single day, every morning you wake up, every night before you go to bed, you're stepping on that scale, you're stepping on that scale. Whereas waist beads, they don't stretch. So I know where I am in my journey based on where they're sitting on my body. So I know if
Hmm.
they're high and they're tight, I know I'm not where I desire to be. I know as they start to get looser and they start to get
Hmm.
lower on my body, okay, we're looking good, we're feeling good. I'm liking the way I feel in my kit, in my clothes. I'm liking the way I'm mobily
Yeah.
moving on my bike. And so yeah, that's the beautiful thing about waist beads with turquoise and salt, and tying it in as an athlete. Yeah, it keeps me solid, it keeps me grounded, it keeps me intentional and not focused on things that really don't matter.
Hmm. And obviously, as part of the as part of turquoise and salt, there's a focus on mindfulness and community and
Mm-hmm.
healing. And I wanted to kind of try to understand from a curiosity standpoint as
Mm-hmm.
well, how that building that space for like-minded people that you
Mm-hmm.
welcome into your space, into the brand,
Mm-hmm.
and that resonate with your values,
Mm-hmm.
you know teaches you about building a community, about building
Yes.
connection with
Yes.
the other people as well.
Yes. It initially started because I wanted a tribe. I
Hmm.
wanted a tribe. I didn't have any friends. Um, Natural born sisters, like I wanted a tribe of women,
Hmm.
and I found myself without that.
Yeah.
And I started Turquoise and Salt, also tied to the trauma that I was experiencing within my relationship. I felt
Right.
isolated. I felt like I didn't have any support to while I was going through what I was going through. And I thought about making waist beads as a means to kind of like build my own community and my
Hmm.
tribe. And I built Turquoise and Salt through storytelling. I was very transparent about the things that I was experiencing and going through. And
Okay.
even the names of my waist beads are tied to things that I've experienced and gone through. And the reason for me being so transparent was also part of building my tribe, because I wanted women to know that they weren't alone. I wanted
Hmm.
women to know that um, they're not the only one out there who might be experiencing what they're experiencing, because I'm raising my hand and I'm saying, hey, I'm going through this thing right here. And if you're going through this too and you want to connect with me, then let's connect. And here's a beautiful item of jewelry that you can take with you and tie on you, and be significant in your healing journey. Um, and let's see where this connection and this journey takes us. I'm very big on energy. My slogan is energy is everything. And just wanting that energy, the healing energy to come through from me in the form of a vessel, that vessel being the waist bead, and I'm bestowing it onto another woman. It's all
Hmm.
sacred and ceremonial, and
Yeah.
it creates this connection that between two women now, because when I gift you something or I tie you with something of significance, you never forget that moment of your life.
Yeah.
whether we become friends or it's just a customer business exchange. I am now a part of your journey indefinitely,
Hmm.
and it was nice to be able to foster that, to hear the testimonies of women who have patroned my brand and how pivotal and instrumental something that I created was and played a role in their journey. And
Yeah.
then gaining a sister in a sense and growing my community and my tribe. It's been transformative and essential to who I am today.
Yeah. I think I'm very happy that kind of you took time to explain that, and I
Mhm.
think there is such an important part of
Yes.
the journey you have been on, because identifies that kind of that the need to heal, and then
Mm-hmm.
through the beads you have found a
Mm-hmm.
way to find your tribe. And
Yeah.
not only that, it's just you're building a welcoming space to other
Yes.
women that resonate
Yes.
with the stories that the stories that you have been through, but also the sharing and the kind of the mindfulness, that aspect of we can be stronger together. And the element
Yes.
of energy is great because it's whether you don't believe it on energy or not, it's it's a fact that if you are negative, that energy that you carry will will kind of be transparent to others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people will recognize, oh, that person looks down, or you know, and and there might be an element of, I don't want to be around that person because they will bring me down.
Mm-hmm.
So if you by finding a community that can kind of bond and put, kind of work together to build themselves up, it's not only empowering everyone, but also it's then rippling through the household, the communities that
Yes.
those people go to. And is so what I'm trying to say is that that positive energy doesn't stay with you. It ripples
Yes.
throughout where you live, where you
Yes.
work, your hobbies, everything. It transcends your body
Yeah.
in a way.
I'm glad that you said that because there is an element as a crafter, as a creator, whether I'm cooking or making waste beads, how I'm feeling on the inside absolutely governs whether or not I choose to make something. There will be moments where I'm internally conflicted with, it could be anything. I had an argument, or, I stubbed my toe, or I'm sick, I had a bad day. Those are the times where I'm hands off, right? Because energy is so transferring that if I am not good within, if I'm not right within, and I go and I try to cook a meal or I go and I make a waste bead, um, I'm in a sense contaminating
Hmm.
that thing that I'm choosing to make because my energy is now being infused into said thing. And
Yeah.
it's the same for positive, so it's like whatever you have going on in here will absolutely attach itself to whatever you're putting your hands on and whatever you're creating. And that's why you have to be intentional. Like intentional
Hmm.
living is essential when it comes to dealing with people and creating a community and creating a sense of, not a sense of belonging, but creating authentic belonging. Yeah, it's all connected
Yeah. Yeah.
intrinsically. It's all connected.
Yeah. And it's that element as well that kind of I wanted now to, we talked about neurodiversity, we talked about your mindset, your the wellness, and the kind of the community that you have been building. And that, somehow it all ties into kind of that creativity, that kind of aspect in your life. I think from what I stand observing from what you're sharing, from what you share on social media, it stands from a point of that element of wanting to find a passion and pivoting, not being afraid to change lanes, and that's tied with being neurodivergent. And I wanted to kind of understand if there is kind of any elements that, through whether it was through your diagnosis last year, that as where you have identified, okay, so these are my strengths, how can I capitalize on them, how can I build on them to be even better, like whether it is leading a community, whether it is racing bikes, whether it being a good mom, like
Awareness, I think, is pinnacle when it comes to improving anything.
Mhm.
Obviously, just because I'm just now knowledgeable of the diagnosis doesn't mean that I haven't been um, excelling, with it unknowingly.
Okay.
And so knowing what my weaknesses are versus knowing why they exist, it it has helped in a sense of, it's like I was already great even with these shortcomings and with these weaknesses, but now that I know what they are, they're essentially not, I don't even classify them as shortcomings or weaknesses now, because I'm able to create, I call them hacks, hacks for myself, and knowing how I am, and knowing how I am, com- combined with knowing why I am that way, it just creates this amazing
Mm.
coupling
Yeah.
of, okay, so now that I have both sides to the puzzle, like, how do I put the two together and make something amazing? And it really does feel like I've unlocked my superpower version of myself,
Yeah.
because I have that additional knowledge. And now the things that once were struggles, challenging, I'm able to be kind of proactive with those things, because now I have this new sense of awareness, and it just makes me better in all elements. One of the things that really has helped me is just communicating and being open and transparent,
Mhm.
and I don't mind telling people that I have ADHD. I don't mind telling people that I am neurodivergent, because it helps them help me. And helping me can come in the form of maybe a little bit more patient,
Yeah.
a little bit more compassionate, more understanding, not necessarily looking for sympathy,
Mhm.
but just grace, right? Like, neurodivergent or not, being neurotypical, all human beings are in need of grace, right? We never know what anyone is going through physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, all the LYs, right? And so with stating out loud, like, hey, I have this ability, I don't call it a disability, unless we're talking insurance and healthcare purposes, but it's definitely for me an ability. I want you to know this ability, because it will help navigate how to best deal with me and talk to
Mhm.
me and treat me and think of me. And so if you um, are communicating with me and you need me to execute a task, and it's taking me a long time to execute a task, I'm not saying excuse the behavior. I'm just saying, like, now you have a little bit more of an inside story
Yeah.
to why things are happening when it comes to me versus someone else.
Yeah. I think it's a superpower in
It
a way
is.
that you are able to capitalize on understanding how to be better.
Yes.
Not that you weren't in the past. I'm not saying that.
No,
I'm saying
we
just
can
like you,
always
as you
stand
said, putting
deeper.
the pieces together. It
Yes.
makes you understand A versus B, and then like build on that.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of ask you a question that I ask of all my guests, and it kind of I think it nicely reflects on everything that we've been discussing so far. And the question is, what does success mean to you personally?
Mm, to me personally, success in a sense is legacy.
Hmm.
I think of Kobe Bryant, I think of
Yeah,
Michael Jordan, and not just in a sense of what they accomplished and what they achieved, but how they inspired and affected others with what they did. And that is their legacy. You know, the legacy isn't just what they are remembered for, but how what they did continues on in present day, and how I want to do things in this life, um, in these moments that affect positively
yeah,
and inspire others to do their thing. Because it might not even be cycling.
yeah,
They could see me do things in the cycling world and feel inspired by that energy to push on in whatever avenue they're going down. It could be becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer. They can see all my trials and tribulations and adversities and accomplishments and triumphs. And they can say, well, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. And, you know, I want them to listen to these podcasts and listen to these words and be motivated and empowered and inspired to check off their boxes. And that to me is what success means to
hmm,
me. It's legacy. It's not just what you do, but what you are able to inspire and empower others to do, because that keeps going on and on and on and on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it very well describes what kind of the whole conversation, touching on the grassroots work you have been doing, touching on the work that you have been doing with Turquoise and Salt. you know it's all about impact, and how that work and those connections helps to open doors, helps to create greater relationships as an impact in
Mhm.
each person's life, and that all then leads on to kind of, well, legacy. So with that, I wanted to kind of close the conversation, but before that, I wanted to leave you with one last question.
Okay.
And this is a question that is asked of all my guests, because it's part of a tradition where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. So the question that was left for you is, have your life experiences informed your cycling in any noticeable ways, positive or negative?
Positively, for sure. Positively. I can take any scenario, any situation, even if it's initially classified as negative,
Hmm.
and find the beauty in it, find the benefit in it. I'm always asking, like, what is the lesson? What am I supposed to get out of this? What am I supposed to recycle from this? And I will say absolutely all things positive. Even if in the moment while I'm experiencing it and going through it, it might feel like, oh, this is crap. Oh, this sucks. Oh, this is the worst. This is awful. Um, it always ends up turning out to be something just what I needed. And it might not be revealed right away, but eventually I'm able to look back and say like, okay, I needed to experience that. I needed to go through that, and this is why, and I'm grateful for that. So
Yeah.
gratitude in all things.
Yeah. I think I love that answer, because all paths you take in life inform your next step. And whether, as you describe it, you don't recognize it immediately, or whether you recognize it 10 years later, that step has enabled you to grow, to be better. And then, because it's a sum of parts, it's just
No,
not something that happens. It's like, oh, I'm now transformed. I'm now a
no,
better human. It's not.
no.
It's a sum of parts. It's the positives and the negatives that all add up, that make the whole. So
Yes.
that's a brilliant answer.
Thank you.
So it's now your turn. What question would you like to leave to my next guest?
Ooh. I would like to ask your next guest, what was their hardest experience that they were able to overcome? I want them to think about the last thing that they did, the last hard thing that they did while they were doing it, and how hard it was. And I want them to answer, like, after going through it and experiencing it, what did they get from it?
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, that's a very powerful question. I think that's is one of those questions that you can have a whole podcast dissecting. So it's brilliant. Well, good luck to the next guest.
Yeah. Yes.
But
Yes.
brilliant. Thank you for asking the question.
Mhm.
I mean, Timia, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. I think
Absolutely.
there's many things to take away from this conversation, and there's only a few that I can pinpoint now. But one of the few is from taking from your life experience so far
Mhm.
is to stay curious, to embrace challenges, not wait for permission, and to
Mhm.
blaze your own trail,
Yeah.
or your own path.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored and grateful to have this opportunity to chat with you. So thank you for your time.
And thank you for having me. And to all of us out there, even if we have to do it alone, and afraid, don't let that stop you from doing it. It doesn't always look like being supported by a group or a team or a club or a brand. Sometimes you have to go at it and do it alone first. And it does not mean that things won't still happen for you.
Yeah, precisely.
Thank you, Pedro.
What a brilliant conversation with Timia. If this conversation got you thinking about growth, purpose, impact, share it to people that you think might resonate with as well. And if you haven't already, make sure to follow Ride to Success podcast wherever you listen to it. This small action helps this conversation reach more people like you who care about growth, leadership, and building something meaningful and impactful. Thank you for listening.